It is time to engage. Today we're talking about episode 12, Vaulting Ambition of Star Trek Discovery. And I've got to say, this show has some vaulting ambitions, so I think it is an appropriate title. I'm Matt, Sonia, Vanya. This is your panel of Trekkies for today, and thanks for joining us. We are talking about this episode, and we're doing it live, which means we're going to have our computer letting us know what people online are telling us. It's our at-home studio audience, and that's what makes this extra fun. So let's get into this. Off the top, we got a huge reveal in this episode. If you're not paying attention, it was a huge reveal. If you've been watching the other 11 episodes, you were just like counting down the minutes for when this was going to happen. And I've got to say, because last week's episode was the like, okay, stamp of approval, we're saying that Vok and Tyler are the same guy, I was like, oh, it's got to be a while before we get the Mirror Lorca reveal. Nope. Nope. Mirror Lorca. Found out right away in this week's episode. Vanya, you called this like possibly right out of the gate. In like episode 4, you were like,
I don't know. You too, because and then I had a dream about it.
What was it? Can you guys tell me what it was that made you think that?
He's so off the rails all the time. He doesn't seem like Starfleet at all. Like he seemed to have all these motives, right? That he was revealing like little bit at a time. You know.
And I mean, by the time he sabotages the jump, it's obvious they're going to the Mirror Universe because he wants to, and if he wants to...
But even when he does that thing to the Admiral, when he sends her, to the Klingon ship, you're kind of like...
That's some cutthroat business.
Yeah, it's like, this guy's not Starfleet. Like, I mean, even if you're Starfleet and you're ambitious and you're like, you don't want to be, disgraced, you still probably wouldn't go that far, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it was just really shady stuff.
Yeah. Sonia, did you find it a surprise, or was this something that you saw coming as well?
No, I didn't see it coming.
Interesting.
I didn't.
Cool.
I was thinking about other parts of the show. That's my defense.
Well,
not being able to pick it up.
It does seem to be a show where they're like, look at all this stuff, ignore this really obvious thing. And I feel like that works sometimes.
Yeah.
It depends how hard you're looking. And we were looking at this because there were giveaways. Yeah. There were giveaways like the fact that he had scars on his back that weren't already there, and that he was acting in a way that they kept playing up at conventions. They were like, yeah, this captain is going to be a moral gray area, something we haven't seen before. And I feel like the fact that we've now revealed that this is Mirror Lorca undercuts everything about everything that character has ever done that you were like, oh, how interesting that a Starfleet officer would do that. More morality play. Let's think about it. The morality plays, the tiny ones that we actually had, are now out the window. Computer?
So Gary says no surprise on the reveal. David calls Landry as Mirror Universe 2. She came over with Lorca and she never acted very Starfleet either.
You know what? Interesting thing about that, Landry, Rekha Sharma's character.
Oh, yes.
I honestly wonder if, because there's a preview where Landry shows up in the next episode. Yep. I'm wondering if I think you might be right, because I feel like that could be our Landry, who's not a dick.
Yeah, and she looks all like timid.
She's like,
no. She's like,
It's like, oh, that looks more Starfleet. It's like, when you're just ready to kill everything, when you're ready to run in there like an idiot and just cut off an arm, then you're probably an idiot from the Terran Empire. Yeah, but if you're like, oh shit, don't hurt me, that's much more Starfleet.
Yeah.
So I think you might be right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Starfleet, they were tough. You're teasing a little. Aren't you teasing a little?
But the blatant comparison we've always had in the Mirror Universe is that it is about just...
There's no code.
There's no code. It's about passion and constant betrayal. Yes. And that breeds a certain kind of tough bastard. Like, these people have always been real dicks.
Lack of caution.
Yeah.
Just going, like, and she didn't have that at all. As a security officer, had absolutely no
caution.
That seems strange.
And you're absolutely right. When you look at things like what happened when Burnham went back to the Shenzhou in the Mirror Universe, the very first thing the captain tries to do is kill her. Without a plan, you are not the better fighter.
No, he didn't
and you're
think about
stuck in an elevator with someone who could murder you.
Yeah.
It's just like...
That sounds a lot like the Landry that we know.
Yeah. I think that... You know what? That is an excellent point. I think all of that tracks really well. Hopefully next week we get to meet real Landry, and then Rekha Sharma's back in the show.
And then, yet again, there's a prediction well before.
Yeah, I guess that's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
I really would love to know why... I can't wait to find out why Lorca did what he did, why he had to take Michael with him, what is he... Why? What was the point of going back with Michael? He had obviously thought he needed to get something to take back to his world.
Well, and he's in love with her.
Yeah.
So there's something that we have never had played in any scene between them. It's always been an interesting... Like, their scenes were really dynamic together, but it was never because he was clearly, like, pining for her.
Yeah.
So that is going to be an interesting thing, especially in this episode... In episode 12, in Vaulting Ambition, when we got to see the sort of, he was dead the whole time moment, where she was looking back and thinking of all the different things that Lorca had said and done, and none of them play as lover-lover. None of them play as romance.
No.
So the idea that he's been after her from a romantic point of view the whole time, if that's where they're going... That was never hinted at. And so that's interesting.
No, he only talked about, like, destiny or fate or but he didn't talk about it in a romantic way at all.
Yeah, and all the while, none of it is fate because he's specifically hunting her down. So it's like calling it fate is great, but it's clearly not at all. Computer?
Yeah, Gary says Michael's relationship with Giorgio was something he wanted to exploit as a tool for his revenge.
Yes, that makes sense, Gary, absolutely. That he knew that Giorgio and Michael had a tight relationship in both universes. Mm-hmm. And
how did he know that?
Well, he knew what was happening in his universe, and as soon as he arrived in our universe, he would have found out that
they're connected again.
She had betrayed her. They were working together for 7 years when that happened. It would have been a lot of research. Yeah. I mean, again, Terrans and thinking, not really their strong suits. Lorca could be the calmest, smartest Terran in the history of the Mirror Universe.
Well, I do think he's absolutely a genius.
Yeah.
Because he's totally navigated all this time.
He pulled this off
like flawlessly.
Way too well.
Yeah.
Like, when you look at the fact that the moment that Mirror Kirk showed up in our universe, he was like screaming and trying to kill everything, and so was everyone else on that away team. You're like, okay, clearly Lorca's version of showing up here gave him a bit more opportunity to take it all in and make a plan. And on the topic of plans, what do you think about Mirror Stamets' plan to lure our Stamets into the mycelial network, Vanya?
I mean, it's kind of convoluted. Like, I don't know. I didn't know how I felt about that. I was kind of... I thought it was good. It was smart of him. He got what he wanted. But I was just like, okay, that's not... I don't even know how to say it. I didn't feel like the stakes weren't revealed, and then it just happened. Like, there wasn't like... You didn't know what he was trying to do, and then it happened, and you're like, oh, that happened.
Yeah, yeah. Where it's like we've seen the fact that our Stamets calls Tilly captain, and that's confusing. And then when you're like, oh, Tilly's captain of the Mirror Universe, okay, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
But then in this episode, Mirror Stamets felt the need to explain that.
Yeah.
I've been sending you glimpses of. It's like,
no,
that was okay. The idea that you're like connected like this was enough for us to understand that was there. One thing that really bugged me about this, about the Stamets, Mirror Stamets thing, is that it's really hard to get an actor to play two roles, and especially hard to have them act against one another. You know, Vok and Tyler is one trick, but they're not like standing in front of each other having a heart-to-heart. Mm-hmm. For Stamets, this was Anthony Rapp playing both characters. And if it's hard to do drama, you had better believe it's hard to do comedy. When you are acting with your only scene partner being you. And this episode had a joke that was probably the worst executed thing I've seen in a long... Like, Orphan Black has been making this look easy for, like, years and years and years. Seasons of television.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, the director that they had, who, you know, does episodes of The Flash and, like, can do network TV, if something like this doesn't work well, and I mean, I've directed an actor who had to play like 7 people in a scene at the same time, and it's hard. All you need is time and to communicate with the actor. And I feel like Anthony Rapp's good. That it shouldn't have been that bad. They either didn't have time or the director didn't communicate it. And that scene really took me out. It was that moment where he's like, "Oh yeah, God's angry at you, Paul." And then our Stamets like stands there making no expression at all. And then it goes back to Mirror Stamets. He's like, "I gotcha for a minute. You should have seen your face." And like, we didn't see that as viewers
on the other side
at all.
Yeah.
I even forgot about it.
Yeah. Computer?
Melissa says that she also thinks that the editing contributed to those scenes being sort of tedious.
Yeah, that's true, Melissa. The editing, and when you've got footage of actors that may time well and may not time well because some of it was filmed when he was wearing this outfit and some with that outfit. Sometimes you're married to certain parts of the edit because you don't have enough of the footage and only certain parts work. And if they don't work for the joke, they don't work. So that whole bit could have just been lifted from the episode and I would have been fine with it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because Stamets was then amazing when we got to have him with Culber. Oh my God.
Yes, it
Beautiful.
was. It was one of the best parts.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Except, can we say something about the editing during that scene? I didn't notice. I was trying to wrap my mind around everything that was happening. But I read somebody reviewed a reviewer today saying when Culber said, "But I've died" or "I'm dead," they cut away from their faces. They didn't show his reaction. They either didn't show Stamets' reaction or Culber's face, something like that. And he made the point that what happens often in Discovery is they're more interested in plot than they are the relationships, which is not news. I mean, we've all talked about this. But what a shame! One of the most beautiful relationship scenes in the whole series so far. And they sort of diminish that moment.
I think it's a lot of what makes you not be invested in Discovery.
Well, yeah, and that's the only actual real romantic relationship. Yeah. Like that's authentic.
I mean, Lorca gets around, but the only real like relationship
that is like romantic, because even like Vok and Tyler, and there's this underlying thing that's not true. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then even with Mirror Lorca and Admiral, also underlying thing, not true. Yes. So we have this actually authentic relationship, and it's cheated a bit.
Yeah, it is a shame. I mean, I've been rewatching Battlestar Galactica, and the interesting thing is that at the end of season 1 of Battlestar Galactica plus the pilot, you've got about 15 hours of programming, and at the end of Discovery, season 1, we'll have about 15 hours of programming, and I gotta say, the characters on Battlestar are what make you want to watch it. Yeah. And Discovery, you're right, Sonia, is just like, look at this plot move, look at this plot move, and it's just like all these moves in an attempt to trick us. And it's like, tell us a story. That's why Star Trek's 50 years old and we've loved it, because it's telling us good stories. Yeah. You don't need to trick us into being surprised. This show's not like, Star Trek's not about surprising you.
That's true, actually. That's right.
That's true.
And they don't seem like a team, though. They don't seem like a group of people. They're not cohesive.
Well, they're not. Their captain's not their captain. They're like, Burnham's not even on their team because she doesn't belong there. Stamets is only a little bit himself. Ash isn't Ash. It's not a team. This family is, like, not a family at all.
Yeah.
The people who actually are part of that team are, like, the people in the background on the bridge crew who are always there, and we never hear from them. Computer?
So Jason is saying the reveals seem off in this show, where other shows' reveals are usually the big moments of the show, and not on this show. And then added that Battlestar Galactica had great reveals.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the reveals on Battlestar were character moments, as opposed to like gotcha. It never felt like gotcha on Battlestar Galactica.
Because it wasn't like they were trying to trick you. Because even if you knew what was going to happen, you still felt like the reveal had impact.
Yeah.
Right? Like, a reveal can still have impact even when you know it's going to happen. But that, on Discovery, when there's a reveal, you're like, okay, you tried to put one over on me, you didn't put one over on me. That's what it feels like.
And if you're bad at doing surprises, and the only thing you're doing seems to be surprises, you've got a bad show. So, like, be about characters.
Yeah.
And what they're doing with Tyler could become very interesting now, where he is both characters.
Yeah. Okay. And
they're running out of time.
why I was curious about why Saru was trying so hard to save him.
I don't understand his motivations other than get him out of sickbay.
Obviously, it's leading to something.
Yeah.
Obviously, to another plot moment. But it's hard to. Why do you think? Please.
I think that he's compassionate because he asked him for help. I think his only motivation was that he's suffering and he's in there somewhere, and he said, "Help me," And I really do think that Saru is the kind of if he. Sees that, even with that, what was that race on the planet? He wanted to help them.
Yes.
And so, you know what I mean? If somebody's struggling with something, if they're hurting or whatever, I think that's his, natural reaction to...
Yeah, it is a little bit weird that the acting captain of the USS Discovery, this is his plot right now. As the Discovery, for 3 episodes running, is just sitting in a debris field, and nobody has a problem with that. It's the most advanced ship the Terran Empire has, and it's just chilling.
I could not stop thinking about that. I'm no one's saying anything. No one says
this is weird. Tilly should be out murdering everything because that's her thing.
She looks like she's back in her normal uniform almost. She's just hanging out in engineering.
I agree. Computer.
Gary says, Georgiou stated she knew nothing of the spore drive technology, yet Mirror Universe Stamets was completely aware and working on it right there. So what is up with that?
I mean, it's a good question, Gary. My guess is that Mirror Stamets was working with Mirror Lorca and not with Mirror Georgiou. Because it's Lorca who has the access to getting to the other side.
Yeah.
So if Georgiou doesn't even know what's happening, I'm guessing it's because, like everyone else in the Terran Empire, she's kind of dumb and worried about other things.
Well,
like murder.
I think there's a lot of people trying to kill her, and all she thinks about is how to survive.
Be alive. Don't be killed.
Yeah.
That seems to be it. Sonia?
And I wonder why Michael agreed so easily. Maybe she didn't have a choice in that moment.
Yeah.
She didn't have a choice in that moment.
When she says, I'm a woman of honor in your universe.
Yeah.
It's but that's not how the mirror universe works.
I burst out laughing. I laughed so hard. That was the funniest part. I was like,
the first thing you found out about the mirror universe was that Cadet Tilly is Captain Killy. So, you should well know that that's not how that works. So
I think that she didn't have a choice, though.
Yeah, she's backed into a corner.
She's backed into a corner. She had to say yes, but she's probably gonna try and avoid getting.
She's pretty crafty. Yeah. She's done some other crafty things to get out of things.
Now we need to talk about the fact that we got to watch some more scenes between Michelle Yeoh and Sonequa Martin Green.
That was another.
And that is a very exciting thing because we haven't seen that really since the pilot 2 episodes. Vanya, thoughts?
I did like seeing Michelle Yeoh, bad Michelle Yeoh. She's pretty bad,
Yeah.
She's super murdery.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting to play that ridiculous wanted bullet that just bing, 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 kills everyone, or Batman Returns. That's an amazing device.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that kills everybody but our friend Jeremy, which is great. I'm glad he was okay.
Yeah,
he's a nice guy.
Yeah, she had some good moments. She got to do title drop. I was happy to see her back.
Yeah.
And I think she delivered actually that line pretty well. It didn't feel like, whoa, you just said the title of the episode. It felt pretty good.
Yeah.
I think the scenes are good. I think it's at times awkward because we know what's happening again. They're in the same situation that they were before. She's betrayed her. Mirror Burnham's betrayed her already.
Yeah.
This Burnham's probably going to betray her again, right?
Well, because Philippa's probably going to betray Michael.
Yeah, so she's going to have to betray her first.
Yeah, you just got to play that game when you're in the mirror universe. Do as the mirrors do.
So it is an awkward kind of situation to watch 2 characters that are supposed to be close, just doing the same thing that is the exact opposite of being close.
Yeah, and the fact that I don't feel like Burnham had a whole lot of intel on her relationship with Philippa and just went on strong. Went in there, was this is going to work perfectly. I have no idea what this relationship is like. I'm just going to call her Philippa. Oops, I should call you Mom. I'm rolling with this.
She already had a knife to her neck at that point.
Yeah,
so
it's you've already screwed that up. Now, the thing about that one scene, the dinner scene that they have, where they're eating Kelpian.
Oh.
Oh.
No, I couldn't.
And she
So
said
good
it was
and bad.
before she knew. She said it was delicious.
Yeah. Kelpians are tasty. I mean, they're prey. They must be tasty.
She was like, this is delicious. And then she found out.
You should know what you're looking for in a kelpien. It's like red lobster. When you're like, I'll have that one. Oh, no.
The ganglia.
Yeah.
It was very upsetting.
I really loved when Sonequa Martin Green has something beautiful to play. Like, in that moment of, oh my god, I'm eating threat ganglia.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to swallow this and be grossed out, but not appear grossed out. That was really well played.
Yeah, she nailed it,
because
yeah.
the thing about the character of Michael Burnham is that the only thing more boring than having main characteritis, where everyone else gets to do interesting things but you, is if you have main characteritis and you were raised on Vulcan, where you're not allowed to really act or behave. And then the only thing worse than that is that if you are not superior,
Right.
like Tuvok, he's superior. He's a smug bastard all the time, and it's awesome. And you know that Spock, when he's on the bridge, he knows he's better than everyone in that room, and he plays it like he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
But Burnham can't even do a Vulcan neck pinch, and she was raised on Vulcan. And to be fair, neither could McCoy when he had Spock's Katra in him. So it's like humans just can't do Vulcan neck pinches. Don't beat yourself up.
Georgiou?
Badly.
Badly.
Like, Georgie woke up in like 30 seconds. You should know you can't do a Vulcan neck pinch, honey, because that just didn't work. That was terrible. So I feel like Sonequa's got so many things working against her on this show, and in that moment she shone so brightly because it was such a beautiful bit.
And she ate a saru.
And she ate some saru. Oh, computer?
Yeah, Gary asked, do you think Burnham knew she was choosing a Kelpian for a meal? He doesn't.
No, I think you're right. I don't think she knew that's what it was because Georgiou said you should know what to look for in a Kelpian. And
I think she thought she was choosing a servant because she was there.
She had one before.
And she had one before. They're dressed in the same outfit. I mean.
Yeah, and she picked the Doug Jones looking one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, go with that.
Yeah, computer?
So what do you think she was choosing him for? What do you think she thought she was choosing?
I think she thought
like
that she was
slave,
picking her, like, the servant she would have while in the palace.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought was happening. So I can't blame her for missing that one.
Yeah.
Yeesh. That's so sad. So sad. That was a nice moment that was a surprise done well. I enjoyed it very much.
That was one of the better ones.
Another surprise that I liked in this episode was when Stamets wakes back up in the wrong body. That was great because Mirror Stamets wakes up on the USS Discovery and is like, okay, I'm going to go handle this exactly the way oh, shoot. Everything has died on in our spore forest as well. And the fact that Stamets woke up in Mirror Stamets' body and was like, oh, crap, I need to go do something. And didn't have a moment of being like, why am I dressed in this? Something's gone wrong. I thought that was super interesting.
I mean, it is a good call. Yeah, that was a good surprise. Like, see, things like that.
Those are cool. Like do that. That worked. That worked nicely. Other things that I thought didn't work so nicely were the idea that L'Rell, using finger lasers that I guess she brought with her, because finger lasers don't appear to be things we've ever seen before.
No.
So the Klingon finger lasers, that she was doing something completely unclear to Ash.
And they let her do that.
Yes, because she could be enhancing him in a certain way.
She could be putting suggestions in him to do horrible things.
How come they couldn't sedate him? I don't know. And all those other people in sickbay, they couldn't sedate him?
He's just a human plus a Klingon. Like, hypospray. Although I gotta say the hyposprays bother me too, because hyposprays back then were more like weird needle things. So the fact that they've got TNG redesigned hyposprays, I'm not a big fan of the hypospray.
But L'Rell,
back to L'Rell. That whole bit, I wasn't a big fan. I don't feel like that worked for me because I couldn't tell what they were doing. I mean, Ash went from saying things in Klingon to saying things in English.
Yes.
But he appeared to be saying Klingon things in English.
Yes. But then when he said sister, like, I don't know. I was like, has it gone away now? I didn't really actually know what happened.
I'd love to read that script and figure out what was trying to be expressed that just didn't work.
But then she yelled, so it was like he was gone. Like she, you know, she was doing like a Klingon mourning thing where it's
it seemed like he had died.
True. Yes, that's right.
That's a very Klingon thing. Yeah. But computer?
There's a suggestion here that that she extracted Vox consciousness.
Yeah.
That's what she was doing.
And then he's gone. And that's why she was. You know.
Maybe. And if that refrain that he was using came from somewhere that was clearly Ash, and we were like, oh, okay, this is something that is very much an Ash engram. Like, if that was all that was left, it would have, I think, been much clearer. But there was no token that let us know that was Ash speaking, except that it started in Klingon, ended up in English, but it was the same idea.
It's weird because that's what they do on Discovery often, is that they put all these surprises and these twists and turns, and then when we just want some, like, just plain old explanation, like clarification,
we don't get it.
We're at a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Computer?
Yeah, Kirsty is expressing some confusion around Stamets and like who the Mirror Universe Stamets is, and the waking up, and if he called Tilly Captain, and what the specifics of that dynamic are.
Yeah. I feel like something that Discovery is specifically not doing is giving us an hour of storyline. Battlestar is a really good example of something that does 13 hours of storytelling, but every hour wraps up an idea and leads you into the next episode without confusing the hell out of you as to what's happening. I feel like Discovery is being put on a streaming service, CBS All Access, as a show that should be binged. You should not watch 1 week of this show. You should watch 5 episodes in a row. You should binge this show. But it's being drip-fed 1 episode at a time like it's network television. But it's not being written like network television.
Right.
Everything about this show doesn't know what it is. And part of that is CBS All Access. Part of that is the writers making a show that they think is strong. And honestly, I envy people who decide that on February 12th they're going to subscribe to CBS All Access for a month and watch this whole show and then leave. Yeah. Because I bet that is a better experience than the one we're having.
I think you're like, you get wrapped up in it, and then you can feel it more all at once, rather than every week you're just like, you're kind of starting from scratch.
Yeah, because they're sort of making this show like a 2-hour movie, and then like a 7-hour movie, and then like a 6-hour movie. Like, that feels like the structure of this show. And if you could watch it like that, you might get that feeling out of it. You might get that satisfaction out of it. But the way it's working right now, it's giving us questions and not answering the question within a timely fashion. It, like, makes us think about a thing, and then, like, 8 hours later, it's explained. And I feel like on a binge show, that works. You know? I feel like when I watch Daredevil or Punisher or Jessica Jones, these are shows where I sit down to watch 5 hours at a time. Yeah. Like, I'm going to watch so much of this show, and the way that storylines bubble up and bubble down and wrap themselves up in threads work for that medium. And I feel like Discovery's going to have a really good life on a streaming platform, and its premiering is not going as well as it could because of that.
But we also know that it's entirely possible to have a show that's like that, where there's like one gigantic arc, and still care about like each individual episode.
Absolutely.
Because Battlestar's like that.
Yep.
Where it's a big, like, massive arc. You don't know who Cylons are. There's a whole thing, but in between that, you're getting these other stories.
Yep.
You know. So it's entirely possible.
What are the threads? So that the characters, the relationships, certain ideas. You know, in Battlestar.
Yeah. Well, in Battlestar Galactica, the threads are relationships between characters that you care about.
Yeah.
And the overarching job of, like, let's get home. Yeah. The fact that there's a whole thread that for 4 years, that's the thing they're trying to do. And on this show, it's never been clear what the thread is. Even on a network show like Star Trek The Next Generation, Episode 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation is its own storyline that also says, all right, humans, I'm a godlike creature and I'm testing you. And so the awkward, weird 7-year storyline that is a bunch of completely cut up episodes that have nothing to do with each other except the age of the characters match. Yeah. And Yar stays dead, sort of. Yes. That's about the only thing that threads that together. But when you land in the final episode and you realize it's a bookend, where
come full circle.
It's come full circle. The same thing happens on Voyager. The same thing happens on DS9, and maybe would have happened on Enterprise. But this show did not at the beginning say, "Here's our essay." We're telling an essay. Our thesis is we're getting home because we got to get home. Our thesis is...
They didn't want to give us one. Sorry, no.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't want to give us one, but I feel like Brian Fuller didn't want to give us one because this was going to be a 13-hour show, and at the end of it, everything was going to get reset, go back to normal, and then the next season was not going to include these characters.
Right.
And as we're getting to the end of this season, we're feeling all the stories wrap up. The mycelial network is dying, so either it disappears or we decide to never go back there. The mirror universe is going to have to be erased from the memory of everyone in the Prime universe. Yeah. So, like, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work in this show that makes sense if you're a 13-hour show that's going to wrap up at the end and be like, okay, that was our story, look how we reset everything. It kind of didn't need to happen. But it also didn't wreck a universe that's been around for 700 hours.
Yeah, because it would have been like an anthology.
Yeah.
We would have, and, you know, that's what I keep thinking, like, oh, okay, maybe in the end we'll get the message. We'll finally get the overall message, and it's one big message as opposed to what we're used to with Star Trek, except for maybe Deep Space Nine.
Well, Deep Space Nine was still good at a 1 hour morality play. Yeah.
But
computer?
Well, David says that we should be patient. He thinks that after episode 15 concludes, we'll look back and see the entire arc shine through, as Vanya's saying. And he thinks the show is brilliant and very cohesive, to be the contrarian.
Nice. I think you're right. I think when we get to episode 15, that is when we'll be able to truly choose whether we watched a good show or we wasted our time. And I feel like on a network show, you can make that decision every day when you watch the episode. And there's a freedom in a network show, and Star Trek has always been a network show. And so we've set up this expectation of what Star Trek is. And it is bold and difficult and an amazing choice to say we're making Star Trek and it's not that. But it also has to be good. And I think maybe by episode 15 we'll look back and be like, man, some growing pains happened there when they fired everybody, but wow, that episode, like, it ultimately worked. Because there's real crap leadership involved in this show, as evidenced by the fact that they fired their showrunner. And that's, like, not a subjective thing. That's objectively a terrible way to make a program. So if they can avoid the, oh shit, it's not Fuller's show anymore, it's Gretchen's show, now it's going to be this. If that can still be great, you've got an excellent point, and I hope that's where we land.
Yeah.
I really do.
That's what I have to say every week.
Right?
I say it every week. I'm like, maybe at the end.
Yeah. and you know, when we were comparing head-to-head Orville episodes to Discovery episodes, there was the odd time when we had a solid 1 hour show where there was like a great story was told on the Orville and like the Pavin episode that felt like 1 hour of television. And it felt like it wrapped up a story, and it was a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And that was an episode of Star Trek. And the thing about this show is that it's not episodes of Star Trek. It is 1 hour chunks of a very long Star Trek story. And we have never seen that before.
Not 15.
Maybe
15 episodes.
But maybe it's a change.
Yeah, it's definitely a change. And maybe it's for the better. We'll see.
Maybe it's also like every other Star Trek show that has a rough, first season.
It is very fair. When you look at Star Trek shows having a rough first season, and a rough second season, and sometimes a rough third season. These are shows that by season 4 work really well. That, however, is completely bloody unacceptable in an anthology series, which is what this was set out to be. And so if this was going to be like, oh, don't worry, the first season with the cast in our anthology season is going to be terrible, that means every season of your show is terrible, because every season is a new cast. So I am very curious as to whether this show will wrap up in a way that feels like we can continue telling stories in this world that won't mess with Star Trek. Computer?
Black alert.
Oh man, that must have been the mycelial network dying? Okay, let's hope that doesn't happen. Coming back? Could have been. And maybe it was the universe where Voq's name is pronounced Voke? Did anyone else? Did that chap anyone else's ass? Like I was when Saru.
That's exactly
said
what
Voke,
it did. Actually,
yeah, right. So it's all chap now. When Saru said Voke, I was like, okay, maybe Kelpians just say things funny. But then when Laurel said Voke, I was like, oh no, Klingon, you don't get to say your boyfriend's name wrong.
I was concerned that next thing Tyler would refer to himself
as Voke.
I was like, please don't. Please, everybody stop now.
Yeah. Like, you
Go
know,
back and watch the tape.
It reminds me of, like, Spock being called a Vulcanian. Like, before things really get set in stone and you're like, okay, this is how that works, that is how this works. It's a phaser, not a laser. It's a shield, not a screen. Like, certain things that don't necessarily, that aren't necessarily iconic yet. And the name Vock is not exactly spelled V-O-C-K.
Right.
Voke, I mean,
it could.
You could say it that way.
Yeah.
And if the 11 previous hours had been saying it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like when Data said, all of a sudden, resistance is futile.
Oh, right.
Like, all of a sudden. That is way worse
than this
so
bad.
Situation.
It is so bad. I mean, mispronouncing someone's name when you're Klingon is pretty bad. Deciding that you're going to go with a like, much more American pronunciation of the word futile.
After a very long time.
Oh, everything about that screwed me up. Although, did you notice that after Data says futile, pretty much everybody pronounces it that way?
Yeah.
Even 7 of 9 says futile. And it's like, oh no, guys.
And it doesn't have the same impact because the two strong syllables in futile are what give it power there at the end.
But this is like, it's not good.
No.
But he's not established as like this, he hasn't been around a long time.
Also, they could have ADR'd that. They could have fixed that in post-production. ADR is looping, like a loop group where a bunch of people show up and say the words that weren't quite picked up properly on the microphone. It happens in the editing process. So these episodes cost $8 million. So, you could have fixed that in post.
Especially hers, because she's said it so many times.
That's the thing. And matching those lips that barely move in the Klingon makeup would have been pretty easy.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Take nothing.
Would have been very easy.
Can I say something about Voq? So Voq is... We're to think that he's a spy, right? He's there
he
to
seems
infiltrate.
To be,
Or
a saboteur, potentially.
Super agent.
Why can't he know that? That's an interesting thing in this story that I'd like to understand.
It seems like something went really wrong.
Why it has to be so repressed, right? And why it has to be sexual, that relationship. I don't know, there's so much happening there that seems to take away from what the storyline could be. It's always a saboteur, a spy is always a great storyline.
Yeah, and I feel like there was a moment there where Voq was like popped back into front of mind and was ready to go do all the things Voq needs to do. And then we went somewhere else with him. And now there's this weird mixture, and it doesn't say why that mixture has happened. Maybe it was getting tossed into space, and then, that somehow wired him, like, gave him a short somewhere. I don't know. But there was definitely something about this character that doesn't make any sense yet.
No,
and we've got 3 hours to continue to explain him.
Like, why do they have to create somebody with so much anxiety and so much distress that's not working for the storyline? If it's not working, it's not working.
It seems like the Klingons really screwed up. Like, they've never done this before.
No,
or since. So,
that's right.
Like,
what, Matt? As far as we know,
they're running out.
I don't know.
Discovery's running out of time.
Yeah, there's only 3 hours left, and it's interesting.
I'm like every week I'm like stressed because I'm like, you're running out of time.
Yeah, you don't have much time to fix this, guys. Yeah. And I feel like there's something going on here where things feel simultaneously too long and too fast at the same time on this show.
Yes, Matt.
Right, because we were talking about how this episode was like ticking
so
away
fast,
and then I still don't feel like I got everything.
I feel like very little happened.
Yeah,
like but so much happened, but very little happened, which is almost like if the first 3 episodes of this arc was squeezed into one episode, I think it would work.
Yeah,
there's nothing that happened in this episode that couldn't have been between commercial breaks in a full, like, in a really beefy 1 hour of Star Trek. I feel like there's something weird about the pacing. And here's the thing. Star Trek Discovery being like nothing else could be a good thing.
Yeah.
But Star Trek Discovery being so unfamiliar and not like anything else is difficult.
But you also said it before, it's not done very well.
Some things are not done
very
well. It's true.
And if it were done well, then the fact that it's trying to be different from previous Star Trek shows would be easy. We might still enjoy it. We might still get something out of it.
I'm definitely I definitely like the show. I do feel like we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
The title, like Discovery, like maybe wasn't the best choice for this show because there's no discovering.
Yeah, I've got to say,
warring.
Voyager was voyaging. Deep Space Nine was in deep space, and it was called that. It was Deep Space Nine. That worked. Star Trek Enterprise got a little literal. I mean,
sure, but it
was on a ship called Enterprise.
It makes a lot of sense. It's the first time.
And to be fair, it wasn't even called that for 2 years. It was just called Enterprise,
right?
Because we don't want people to think we're Star Trek. No, that would be a mistake.
After all the success,
after all that blistering
we wouldn't
success,
want that to happen.
Yeah. You said something interesting once, Matt, about how this show should have been done years ago, right? That maybe if it had happened closer to the other, to say after DS9, for example, or after Voyager,
or when they tried to reinvent Star Trek with Enterprise, but just gave it a funny name and a funny theme song.
So if they'd broken all those rules then, maybe it would have been one thing. Because we had already had three shows, one after the other, of the kind of Star Trek that most people really, really liked. Even the first seasons. We even liked the first seasons of those shows in a lot of ways. So maybe it's just not the right show for the time. I mean, we could talk about this ad nauseum, right? We just want we just want some good Trek. We want some good Trek.
Yeah. Well, it's competing with like all the other like binge like shows, right? Like if it had been made when Enterprise was made, it would have been way ahead of the game. It would have been totally new. The style of
it would have been like Battlestar Galactica was.
Exactly. But now it's like everything's like that. So where does it make itself different and still Star Trek?
Well, and you can't make yourself a binge show if you're not available all at once to binge. Otherwise, the people who really love your show don't get to see it in the best way.
Well, I think they didn't do that because then people wouldn't have got CBS Access, right?
Absolutely. So they wrote the wrong show for the goal of getting CBS All Access viewers.
So when people watch it on Netflix, do they get more of it? Do they get all of it? Or do they get it?
No, it's drip-fed exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing will be to see if this winds up getting a crazy exciting life after it's aired. Like right now, people are rediscovering Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
In this in the binge
you can
way.
Binge it.
They are. Yeah. It's like gotten this new life after 25 years, right? Yeah. Because it's now you can watch it all at once, and people are like, "What?
I couldn't do that before unless I bought the DVDs."
And it's actually designed, actually really well designed for that, other than any other Star Trek show.
Yeah.
So imagine if they had released Discovery in that way.
Yeah, if Discovery was released on Netflix
all at once,
like on February 12th, all at once, I bet that show would go over really well in the places that it's released. It's just CBS All Access is their goal. And I think that is sort of it's making the show less what it could be.
And because the science isn't clear, whatever, if you want to call it science, because there's so much happens, even though so little happens, it's hard to not, you have to watch, you want to watch them over and over again, you want to, I suppose you can on CBS All Access, right? Can you watch the previous shows?
Yeah.
But you have to want to. Yeah. And the thing about, like, I've only watched Jessica Jones once. And the way I watched it was the way I'll remember it. And honestly, I'll probably only watch Star Trek Discovery once, because it's not it's not my jam in the way that Deep Space Nine or Battlestar Galactica is. Ronald D. Moore, you're welcome. But the fact that the only time I will watch Star Trek Discovery is this way, because I'm a massive Trekkie, I've got to watch it when it comes out. It's just a damn shame that that's the way I'll remember it. And, maybe they'll have a whole new plan for next year. Maybe they'll write it differently.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll release it differently. Who knows? But it will be very interesting to see if this show in the summer of 2018 is like a crazy great binge, super popular on Netflix, or people love it on the other platforms it'll be available on. Like it's on Crave TV in Canada. I guess those are the only two platforms.
It's going to be on Space, right?
It'll exist on the Space app, which I guess is some way related to Crave, because I think they release at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, so it's I'm really curious how that is going to go.
Well, if you think about it, Matt, we'll know that Lorca was Mirror Lorca. Looking back on the other episodes, it might make them more interesting.
It might be if you
want
rewatch.
to go back and rewatch it. Yeah,
it might be.
See if he reveal, like, if there's more reveals, like through
more hints as you go along.
Yeah. We didn't talk about that whole incident with the sister. And
that when that other mirror captain shows up and is like, "Oh, Lorca, you were with my sister," and it was like a fake out where, of course, our universe's Lorca wouldn't know the name,
right?
And it was like, "Oh, I see what you're doing."
But I feel like they should have just got to that, like, cut or done it differently.
Oh yeah, that was not 5 scenes. Because that should have been 1 scene.
Yeah. And to see him reveal that, I was like, but we know because Burnham's already said it. Like she's already there, And then it was like a secondary thing?
Yeah, I don't love the way they revealed it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't really work for me either. But now that we've been ragging on this episode over and over and over, let's talk about... Let's go to Red Alert here, and let's talk about whether this episode trekked it or wrecked it.
You're going to ask Sonia first?
Sonia!
It wrecked it for me.
This episode wrecked it for you?
I actually like certain things about this episode more than other ones, for example. But I remember I'm trying to remember the criteria. Does it reflect the original intentions of Gene Roddenberry's original series? And I would say it doesn't. But I would say that Discovery just doesn't. It's not that kind of show.
It's not that kind of show, meaning it's not a Star Trek kind of show.
It doesn't go in for those really interesting morality moments, right? Those morality plays. And that's a shame because they had a lot to work with. Again, they seem to be squandering opportunities. They create characters and scenarios, but then they don't really make the most of them. So I think it could be, and maybe then in the next 3 episodes we'll see some more of that happening. But I think what's going to happen in the next 3 episodes is they have to come to the end of this story. We have to figure out why Lorca did what he did and who's going to survive and who's going to die. It's just going to be more death in the next little while.
Yeah.
And I know people die on Star Trek all the time, but not all of the main characters, not
usually the captain.
Not usually
And it'll be interesting when we get to season 2. Like, obviously, Mirror Lorca will not be the captain of the ship, and it begs the question, who will be? It's not going to be Saru, and it certainly won't be the mutineer. Yeah. So I imagine Discovery will have a new captain. And
will Burnham be in jail?
Yeah, and what do you do with Burnham? Absolutely.
But I do want to say one thing. I do want to watch the next 3. And this is the first time with Discovery that I really want to see what's going to happen. So, like I said, things happened in this episode that made me interested more than in the past. It just wrecked it, though, from that
and getting to see Rekha Sharma in next week's preview got me very excited. I'm very excited for that. So, Vanya, did this episode trek it or wreck it for you?
This is so hard for me to say because I'm thinking about this, but I think it wrecked it.
It's never wrecked it for you.
Tell me about this, Vanya.
I've been thinking about this a lot. It's because they didn't even ask any questions. Nope. Usually I even back it up when they even just present a question, like they did last week. Like, was it last week when? Yeah. The second episode after they got into the Mirror Universe. Even that presented like this question of being able to maintain your human self, your humanity, while you're amongst all these people of monsters who are all trying to kill each other. Yeah, exactly. And to see the struggle, like they had like a theme throughout to see the struggle within Tyler himself, and then the struggle within, and to see her being really humane to Saru and him doing the same to her. So there was this theme, and to me I was like, okay, I can take you guys, I'm with you, and I'll stay with you. But this week there weren't even any of those questions.
It was just plot machinations.
It was just like bam. And so that's really hard for me. It's really hard for me to say it because I feel like even I had said in the first Mirror Universe episode, in episode 10, I said, Mirror Universe is Star Trek. That is a Star Trek thing. That's a Star Trek trope. It's like, it's Star Trek.
But the mirror universe is used to tell a moral play. Yeah.
But even in this one, I can't even say like that it's being utilized like properly.
Yeah, don't eat your friend's threat ganglia. That's the morality thing. Like, that's about all I got.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
There was a little bit of like, when Stamets and Culber were talking, you know what I mean, about this idea like that you could, that your thoughts and the way you perceive things and what your intentions are can even bring you back to life, basically. Your intentions. And I thought, I'm trying to hang it on there, but I couldn't even force my, it would be like push, like, it's like square peg, round hole kind of situation.
Yeah, I gotta say this episode managed to take every moment of nuance in the previous 11 episodes where this rogue does-it-his-way captain of Lorca, where he was doing things that made me think about what it is to be Starfleet, what it is to be Starfleet in a war. It took all of those things and stripped any ounce of moral play out of it because he was a villain the whole time. So it did more than wreck this episode. It wrecked every single time.
Are you taking back your other?
I'm revoking Trekkits.
No.
This Mirror Lorca reveal completely untrekked the whole show for me. But it doesn't necessarily make it a bad show.
Right.
It makes it way worse Star Trek than I even thought it was.
Okay, but guys, we don't know what his motivations are, though. Like, we're not sure how it's going to end, right? Could it be redeemed, Matt?
Could he be a nice guy?
Not a nice guy, but maybe not be a pure villain.
I don't know if he can. I mean, with his Woody Allen grooming and his like his whole thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
no, that's a solid point.
Like, can he like?
I don't know if you can pull that one out.
In this man's face.
Jason Isaac is a really charismatic guy.
I forgot the stop.
He apparently used up this sister. I don't know what he did to her. Yeah. We don't even have that information. And I don't think he's going to get any better. I think we're now going to get to see him as a real villain.
In other words, he cannot be redeemed.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, charismatic as he may be.
He might even be worse than Mirror Philippa. Like, he's probably worse than her.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he was planning to kill her and become the Emperor. So now he's managed to use another Michael to try again. And so I am fully expecting him to be the villainist version of Mirror Lorca possible now. That's my expectation. Computer?
So Kirsty, who really liked the episode and thinks the show's been getting better over time, she felt, though, that it had more of a Stargate SG-1 feel to it as opposed to Star Trek. So she Trarect it.
Trarect it!
Is a new word she is going to be using.
Kirsty, I like that idea. I think there have been a lot of episodes of Star Trek Discovery that Trarect it. I think that's a really interesting idea because this show is living in a weird in-between universe where things don't have to be early Gene Roddenberry Star Trek as long as they're kind of a little bit Star Trek Voyager adventure-y. I think that the people who deconstructed the Star Trek universe and decided to make Star Trek Discovery did it in a similar way to how J.J. Abrams did it for the movies. Where he was like, what makes Star Trek? Beam me up, Scotty, Engage, and Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. So I just need those three things. Great! And I think Discovery picked the wrong things. Like, I guess you need warp. Yeah. It shouldn't necessarily look like that, but you need warp. You need a ship that's sort of shaped like the Enterprise, okay? And you need a crew. And then they just proceeded to screw all of those things up. And it's like, now it's about the mycelial network, and the ship looks cuckoo bing bong, and it's way too big. And also, your crew is like constantly dying, and they don't like each other, and they're not who they say they are.
Yeah, and even the war aspect of it, which, is difficult, is challenging to do in Star Trek, like, do the Roddenberry things, right? Because he was against that.
And he had a Cold War to play with.
Exactly. But then, they did it in DS9. Like,
And
it's
it was
not
still
like it had, you know, it's never been accomplished in Star Trek to have, like, you know, there's the Borg, there's, you know, the Dominion. Like, it exists. So it's not like they're pulling from nothing.
Yeah.
So they totally could have done it. We know that about the history, you know what I mean? You know, before Kittimer and all that.
Yeah.
So it all exists. All the stuff's there. That's the thing about Star Trek. It's like, there's so much stuff to pull from and make it new. Yeah. Because it's stuff that's been mentioned, stuff that's been said, and then
if you want to play in that universe, you can do it.
Yeah.
But if you want to tell a story that is a square peg in that round hole, you're screwing it right up. Computer?
Yeah, Gary says that he thinks what we see is a cinematic approach to a series program, which, you know, is echoing what you're saying. He also thinks that Enterprise is underrated, so I'm just going to throw that in.
Yes! Enterprise Season 4 is underrated.
Yes.
Season 3 Season 3 is like setting dog poo on fire. Season 4 is amazing. 1 and 2 are sort of a bit of a mess. But since we're talking about other captains, I'd like to talk about something that is geekier than Star Trek alone. And that is stamp collecting that are Star Trek stamps. And now Kat, who is one of our frequent panelists here, has been kind enough to bring these awesome, incredible, amazing collections of stamps. They are Canadian stamps, so if you would like to win these stamps, collect them, don't use them. Because you can only mail things in Canada. We are going to give these away. I'm not going to tell you how, but next week we're going to talk about how we're going to be giving them away. And then by our finale episode, we will say who gets to win this beautiful, priceless, wonderful collection of all the good captains. We got Kirk, we got Picard, we got Sisko, we got Janeway, the best captain, and we've got, you know, Captain Bakula as well, who is, you know,
He's a good captain.
He's a good captain. He's a good captain.
You know what? He's the first captain. So he might not have been good at it, but he was figuring it out.
I think he was good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, season 3 is rough.
I think he was cast well.
It's real rough, but he was cast well. I think he was a good captain.
He is well cast. Yes. I mean, it would have been nice if it wasn't a white guy that started it all. That's just me. Computer?
Melissa just wants to say Scott Bakula for life.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Scott Bakula.
Yeah, I like Bakula.
The
Melissa
thing about
only ever comments on Scott Bakula.
which makes sense. But I mean, Bakula has network sci-fi like cred in a way that none of the other ones had. They like showed up and got into sci-fi, but that's a man who like made the 80s sci-fi on TV happen. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Did you have something awesome to say?
No, I didn't know.
I mean, he's pretty good looking here.
Oh, no,
is that
not
what we're talking about?
I was going to ask, do they all have a British-speaking member on the crew? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Did Janeway have a British-sounding person?
They always need.
Picardo was like the properest sounding one, but I don't know
right.
that anyone was British.
No,
but those three.
Those three,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, everybody else. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. And I mean, Scotty's a kind of British, so there you go. He's not always on the bridge. They might not be a part of Britain for long, but Scottish counts right now.
That's right.
And I wonder if it counts in the future. I guess we'll maybe find out if there's a referendum there. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we are so excited for the next 3 episodes. Let's see if Star Trek Discovery pulls it out of the fire. Everybody said this episode wrecked it on the panel, but I must say we had some Trekked It and some Trowrecked It with our at-home studio audience. So I'm really excited to see where we take it from here. Next week is interesting. We get to see some characters come back. Yeah. And, maybe they'll find Culber while they're at it. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. I miss them already.
Maybe it'll be nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for joining us.